Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week beginning the 22nd of September. I'm going to share some of the big themes of this week to begin with. Then on screen I'll share the event chart right at the start of the week, which always provides an influential backdrop for the whole 7 days. I'll then go through all the influences in detail to give you a clear picture of what we can collectively expect. Please stay with me. I'll then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please help it to continue to thrive and do so now. As we come into this new week, we're surfing the energy of the first solar eclipse in Virgo for 19 years, which brought the cosmic curtain down on last week. But that energy provides a backdrop for the next 6 months. Virgo, of course, is very much about precision. It can be about practical solutions. It's about the details. The sun and the moon, together with that eclipse, are urging us to think about the ways that we can take some steps to reform our lives and create some improvements to be a bit more virtuous. But it doesn't sound very sexy, does it? But we can make it fun if we want to. But we did have on the other side of the heavens, when the eclipse occurred, the watery energy of Neptune and the very cool and perhaps restraining energies of Saturn. So whatever we want to achieve this week in particular, if we are trying to improve things, we're going to have to work at it. But ironically, on Monday, the sun moves on from Virgo and moves into the sign of Libra. Very much about balance, equilibrium, fairness, but it can also be about our relationships. And it joins up with Mercury in the sign. Now the sun is going to go immediately opposite the dreamy energies of Neptune, and that can bog us down a little bit, but the sun also forges a stunning ground air trine, and I'm going to tell you about the significance of that shortly, but it's very exciting. But also on Monday, Mars, the planet of passion and assertion, which has been in the sign of Libra, where it's in its detriment, it's been there for just over the last 6.5 weeks, but moves to the other zodiac sign it rules, beyond Aries, of Scorpio, where it's very much more to do with desire, and it can be quite blunt and to the point. And ironically, Mars is going to immediately come into contact in a testing way with Pluto, the modern ruler of the sign. So I'm going to unpack that for you too. And also, to add even more layers of complexity to the start of this week, Venus newly arrived in the sign of Virgo, where she's in her full, is in a testing right angle on Monday and Tuesday to the electric energies of Uranus. Please stay with me as I unpack all of this for you. But on the screen now, let's just take a look at the starting positions of that chart for the week. So you can see the moon has just moved on from the sun. They're essentially still in conjunction, just disassociate. The moon is now in Libra. The sun plays catch up later in the day, but the moon will move on Monday and connect with Mercury. Sometimes when the moon and Mercury are engaged with one another, we can find it a little bit difficult to get in touch with whether we feel something or whether we think something. But I feel there are some advantages here. It's just the moon very early in the morning on the Monday is opposite Neptune. So if we're finding it a little bit difficult to get to sleep, there may be something that we're trying to figure out. But later in the day, comes into contact with Mercury, and I think a bit more clarity can come. But the energy of that eclipse, you can see the sun still on the anaretic degree early on Monday, but actually in a very positive trine to Pluto. Sometimes we can resist, but the way the world is changing, at the pace it's changing, the more we resist, the more it's difficult. So this is saying, in a way, even if it's to do with our daily routines, which is very Virgo, and we have some that give us a sense of comfort, they're metronomic. Pluto's kind of saying to us, because it's the planet of the collective, but it's in the sign of community, that for us all, this is a shifting situation. So it's better in some ways to flex into it. And the mutability, perhaps, of the solar eclipse in Virgo can encourage that. But the big story of the sun moving later on Monday into the sign of Libra is that here we usher in cardinal quadrant 3, the third 13-week segment of the overall Western tropical astrological year, which is predicated on the seasons. So this is an intriguing development. The sun in the sign of Libra is in its fall, so it has to fight for its voice. But also because Mercury's there and the moon combines with Mercury later in the day, I feel there can be some very lively conversations. The sun has to shrug off the potentially draining influence of Neptune, but forges a sparkling alliance to Uranus and Pluto, a grand air trine. If you're connecting to people who are very ideas orientated, happy to work as part of a group where there are some basic connections with one another that are very much in touch with perhaps collectivism, collaboration, well, this could be a tide that really gains pace very quickly and in a very positive way. But Mars comes out of the sign of Libra also on Monday, and its return to Scorpio for just over 6.5 weeks can certainly amp up that part of us that wants something. It could be something to do with a big ticket item. It could be someone we find utterly fascinating. We may find ourselves a little bit more obsessed, particularly this week as Mars clashes with Pluto in a square. But I feel with Pluto in Aquarius, if there is any kind of relationship we're involved with, where we do feel penned in, perhaps just by the way it's always been, it could be within an organisation we work in, it could be with a line manager, it may be with a friend, it could be in a partnership. If we feel in some ways that we're pinned in, it feels controlling, even if that's not the cynical purpose. I feel that Uranus, what Uranus is going to do, is really push us this week to resist any kind of coercion and leverage that someone may put on us. So very weak relationships, they do feel rather political, or just the right to have a point of view that may not necessarily conform to other people. That may be where we can use that Libran energy, which is a desire to find balance, but also to find purpose. And that purpose can be, in a way, to find the most satisfying connections to others, whoever it may be. It doesn't have to be romantic. So this week begins also with Venus in a square with Uranus. So the potential for a change around relationships that aren't working is very, very strong, but it could also see some kind of power struggle. And if you are someone who's really tried your best to be very obliging, in a way very Virgo, be of service, do your best to be practical and supportive, and someone's still not hearing your voice, whoever it may be, as this week goes on, I think there could be some very intense discussions, maybe all the way to outright conflict, but there is the opportunity to break free and liberate if that's what we really want. So that's the big opportunity of this week. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, please check out my testimonials below. I'm sharing a few on the screen now. Also, please check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. We're refining it all the time, very Virgoan, and it's really coming together. You can enjoy your free daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, general, love or Vedic horoscopes, and that wonderful free 3-card tarot, which is, if I say so myself, really brilliant. Also, you can sign up for your free daily horoscope, fire to your device each morning. So Aries, your week beginning the 22nd of September still sees the potency of the solar eclipse, urging you over the next 6 months to think about the things in your life that maybe you could reorder, repurpose your energies in perhaps a more practical and precise way. But with the switch of the sun into Libra, joining up with the moon and also Mercury on Monday, even if you have felt a little unsettled, perhaps at work, maybe around a relationship, it's perhaps seemed that the things that weren't quite right have been more pronounced than the things that were working for you. You do have a chance, once the sun gets past Neptune in your sign, to clarify what you want. It may be that there is a situation that isn't working very well for you, and the urgency of your ruler Mars diving deep into Scorpio but clashing with Pluto suggests if you don't see a future in any kind of alliance, which has been a struggle, it has felt on edge or irritable of late, this could be a week of key transitions, and you may make some big decisions, but there could also be some intense discussions, not least because the week begins with Venus, the relator, in a very agitated right angle with Uranus in your sector of how you think. So even if there is part of you that wants to show goodwill, maintain things on some kind of level, if it really isn't working, this is the time to look at it and look at it directly in the eye. But if you're lucky enough to be collaborating or connecting to people who bring a sense of excitement into your world, it doesn't have to necessarily be just in a personal romantic context. Maybe someone who shares your ideas or your passions or your interests. There could be someone new coming into your situation at this time, which provides a lot of uplift, hope and expectancy. You can order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free, also get your life roadmap report, but in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDFs for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Taurus, your week beginning the 22nd of September suggests with the eclipse, you're being asked to take your talents really seriously. But even if we have flair, even if we like to play, be sociable, we also have to work at it, and we also need to have a little bit of structure. And I think the sun moving into Libra, joining up with the moon and also Mercury on Monday, just gives you a nudge to make the most of whatever it is that excites you by just putting some attention into the details of how you're going to shape whatever it is that's really bringing you alive. But the other thing that's exciting about this week is that Mars moves into your opposite sign for just over 6.5 weeks. If you do want to bring someone new into your world, this will give you more confidence to go and get what you need. Not necessarily always easy, but if you are someone who's a little bit reluctant to put your best foot forwards, this will give you more confidence. But what Mars moving into the 7th house can also do, as it comes into a very powerful clash with Pluto, if you work in an environment where despite your talents, despite your dedication, despite all that you're putting in, if you have a line manager or a boss, or you work in a big organisation where that just seems not to be seen at all, it could actually make you feel very cross. And you may find later this week that you're a bit triggered. And also even at the start of the week with Venus, your ruler, in a tense square with Uranus, if there is someone you're interested in, or there is something you've got your eye on, a material item, try not to be too impulsive. But if you can just showcase those gifts that you've got, put the hard work in. But certainly if you don't feel appreciated, you're going to find that your voice, and this is very much part of your nature, if you're stirred, you're usually very placid, But if you feel that someone is taking liberties and taking you for granted, you can push back in a very powerful way in the second half of this week. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDS for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Gemini, your week beginning the 22nd of September still sees Uranus, that electric energy in your sign, squaring off to Venus right at the start of this week. There may be something that gives you an impulse to change your home. It may be moving the furnishings around. It may be suddenly wanting to repaint. It could be decluttering or actually clearing out things that in the past may have been quite precious to you. But you could also feel a little bit on edge, even around a close emotional relationship. Now, of course, we had the eclipse as well, as last week came to a close. So the emotional dimension of your situation is very much to the fore, just as the sun makes its way into a much more demonstrative, warm and affectionate part of your personal journey through the sky each year, joining up with the moon, but also with Mercury, your ruler. So on Monday, even if you have had a focus over the weekend very much on how things feel, about your connections to people at the very root of your world, a more playful dynamic does start to build up. But Mars also moves from an area where it's really seen you strutting your stuff in perhaps a very assertive way socially over the last 6.5 weeks or so, moving into a more practical area. But it does come into a tense right angle with Pluto. If you do feel in some ways boxed in, it may be around those home or family relationships. It may be around other obligations and restrictions. That can be quite hard this week. But what you can do with that cluster of energy in the sign of Libra is use your legendary quick wits and sense of humour to, at times, perhaps just bring a different energy to an exact moment, or give yourself a bit of detachment, which is possible with the air energy of those Libran players. But if you are a creative, something could start building up for you at this time. But it needs to feel right for you. And that balance between what you give and get will also be crucial. But I think that's where Mars is square with Pluto can actually, despite it being a very intense and difficult energy, in a way it can keep reminding you of the need to stay in touch with that solar eclipse energy. How does it feel, especially if you start to feel that you're getting pulled into doing things you don't really want to do? So as much as you possibly can, do the things that feed your sense of fun, enjoyment and pleasure, the fifth house energy of Libra, but make sure it feels right too. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDS for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Cancer, your week beginning the 22nd of September sees the energy of the eclipse, of course your ruler the moon, right at the heart of that, urging you to think very much about your ideas, your beliefs, how you express them, how you interact with people, how you're travelling through this particular life journey. It may even be that that is a metaphor for some physical travel that you're considering. But then, strangely, on the back of that cerebral energy, in the practical Virgo, there is a big developing energy in your fourth house, which has an echo of the sign of Cancer. It's not exactly the same because, of course, the host is the airy Libra. So what you're looking for this week is a balance in your emotional life. But there's a very dramatic change too with Mars moving into your fifth house. If you're in a good place, over the next 6.5 weeks could be quite thrilling for your love life. If you are someone with big talents, you're going to have a lot more desire to raise your profile, and your passion for those things can really be amplified. But the clash with Pluto does suggest if there are some sensitive or delicate things playing out in your situation at the moment, and those are the things you need to think about or discuss. It could be highly charged, quite intense, and maybe even a little bit uncomfortable. If there are some things that do need to be talked over, or someone's unwilling to talk over something that's important to you, there's the potential for some intense politics. But if you are single, the clash between Mars and Pluto also could give you an enormous compulsion and see you drawn towards someone that you may find irresistible, particularly if you like the way they think. But ask yourself this question: does it feel right? Because that's your guiding principle, Cancer, and let that continue to be the case. You can order your year 2026 personal horoscope now. Get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDFs for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Leo, your week beginning the 22nd of September from the energy of the Virgo eclipse is asking you to be mindful of resources, even shared finances, but also where you might be somewhat attached. Are there things you need to think about? And the cluster of energy that builds up on Monday in the sign of Libra, which is an air sign, is perfect for you to think, but also discuss some of these issues. But Mars moves into a very tender part of its journey through the sky, also on Monday, the 4th house. And that could make you a little bit prickly, especially if you're talking about things with people you're very close to, whether it's siblings, a partner, for example. And also Mars comes into a clash with Pluto in your sector of relationships. If you're not feeling that someone's aligning to your values or understanding your concerns about finances, or if you feel that you're a little bit penned in and that there's a sense that someone's, even if subtly, trying to control how you think or how you make some key decisions, all of that can start to really irk you as this week goes on. So as much as Libran energy can be about achieving equilibrium, fairness and balance, I think for you there's quite a passionate set of influences this week, and that could fire you up and see you voicing any dissatisfactions, particularly towards the end of the week. You can order your year 2026 personal horoscope now. Get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDFs for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Virgo, this week begins with the energy of that solar eclipse pouring into your sign, but it was right on the last degree. And the switch of the sun into Libra is asking you to really understand what you've been working on recently and how you can start to convert those ideas or those passions into something more tangible. The second house is about foundations. It's also about your value. It's about money. But Mars moves into a very passionate part of your chart if you want to articulate your message. But right at the start of the week, Venus is still being affected by the potentially disruptive energies of Uranus. If you work in a creative environment and you don't really feel that your voice or your ideas are being considered or appreciated as much as they could be, as this week goes on and Mars comes into a turbulent right angle to Pluto, you may start to feel a bit more resistant from that part of your nature that likes to make a contribution, that can be very conscientious. You could find yourself being much more outspoken. You may even find yourself being all the way to rebellious. But all of this is taking you on a journey to being in touch with what really, really gives you an opportunity for your sole purpose to shine through. And I think at the end of the day, the long journey that Pluto is going to be going on through your 6th house, the work and the organisational parts of your life, that maybe have been quite stable for some time, there is the potential for change in the works. So if you don't feel recognised, seen or valued at the present time, you're going to be much more outspoken about it, but perhaps also much more proactive about trying to find an alternative situation where you do feel you would be more appreciated. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDFs for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Libra, your week beginning the 22nd of September is really unique. The energy of the solar eclipse was on a very sensitive point of your 12th house, maybe stirring up some insecurities, past issues that aren't quite resolved. Yet the sun's urgent move into your own sign on Monday, ushering in cardinal quadrant 3, the next 13-week period of the Western tropical astrological year, is a great chance for that part of your nature, your appreciation of balance, fairness, but also relating to people skillfully, gets a chance to glow up, particularly in the alliance with the electric Uranus and the transformational and penetrative Pluto, both also in air signs, forging a grand air trine. So you could go from feeling full of doubts and perhaps a little bit subdued in your energy to having an opportunity to really develop something at quite a pace of knots. But with Mars making its way on Monday into your second solar house, over the next 6.5 weeks or so, you're certainly going to have an eye on the financial part of your situation. And you can also be more determined to get what you think you're worth. Good for you. But Mars does clash with Pluto, the other ruler of the sign of Scorpio, later in the week in Aquarius. It's not the best of times to be perhaps too speculative. If you are considering a business relationship, don't be too impulsive. Take your time to examine all the facts and figures in a very, very careful way. Also, I have to say that Venus, your ruler, is now parked up in a very sensitive part of your chart and is in a square with Uranus still as the week begins. If you have been finding a romantic relationship a bit tough going recently, particularly if there's issues of trust, I think the energies of this week can make you much more minded to take back control of your time, energy and individual power. Even if you don't make a binding decision to move away from someone, you're going to be much feistier about what's right or what's wrong for you personally. And that, of course, is absolutely the right thing to do. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDFs for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. Scorpio, your week beginning the 22nd of September sees your traditional ruler, Mars, return to your sign on Monday. Over the next 6.5 weeks, don't underestimate the amount of personal magnetism that you can emanate, all the way to being very alluring, particularly if you like to meet someone and interact more in terms of your romantic situation. Ironically, Mars does clash with your modern ruler Pluto later this week, and it does require some care because the Sun also on Monday moves into a tender part of your situation, joining up with the Moon and Mercury. So being in touch with the more psychological part of life, which you do have an appreciation for, is going to be important if you suddenly feel you want to be bolder, more direct, and even blunt as you can be later in the week when Mars and Pluto clash, because that could see some very turbulent energies come up. Your temptation may be to be very to the point if you feel someone's not appreciating what you want, it's not tuning into you. Also, Uranus, the planet of disruption, is clashing with Venus at the start of this week in your sector of friendship. And of course, that's where the solar eclipse was. So as the week begins, that energy, which is very much to do with your long-term plan, your network, your friendships and your alliances, then switches to a more introspective vibe with the sun moving into the sign of Libra. So it's quite a juggle this week. On one hand, you're being asked at the start of the week to think long term, think about your friendships, your connections, perhaps even your love life. Then you're being asked to be more in touch with your inner dimension, the energy of the sun, the moon and Mercury on Monday in the 12th house. But then with Mars roaring into that very feisty right angle with Pluto, you could find yourself being very triggered and reactive, to be honest, particularly if someone hits on a tender point within you in a conversation later in the week. How do you deal with all of this? Well, do know that Mars is going to give you tremendous support over this next 6.5 weeks if you do want to start something new that requires determination and requires a lot of self-belief. It may just be that if it's something very big you're planning, you might want to wait one more month for when the sun plays catch up with Mars and moves into your sign. You can make a move this week for sure, but just stay in touch with your vulnerabilities, because that's what the energy of Libra is going to bring up. And if someone is tricky, is difficult, just know that there may be part of you that could uncharacteristically just be a little bit more prone to feel affected by those more external voices. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDFs for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. Sagittarius, your week beginning the 22nd of September is seeing you come off a period where goals and ambitions, your role in life, your connection to the world at large has been very much to the fore. The switch of the sun into Libra and joining up with the moon and Mercury brings a more friendly, fraternal energy to bear. Over the next month, you may be getting in touch with people you haven't seen for some while. You may want to socialise more. But there is a complexity because Mars, also on Monday, dives deep into a very tender psychological part of your chart. Over the next 6.5 weeks, Mars can stir up some surprising sediment, perhaps to do with past upsets, hurts, issues like abandonment or loss. Mars, of course, can be about anger. In the 12th house, Mars can also be, sadly, about betrayals. If that's been part of your backstory, you may be surprised by some of those thoughts compete for your attention over these next few weeks. But just be aware that Mars is clashing with Pluto later this week. There could be something that really is very, very surprising for you, because it could just come up within your being because of Mars and Pluto both being the rulers of Scorpio, which is quite deep. So there could be a conversation that just really gets you thinking. Maybe it is going to be about that past person that you had that very, very passionate relationship with. Perhaps you're yearned for someone like that. Perhaps there's someone in your current social circle that you're drawn to, possibly in a clandestine way. Just know that when Mars and Pluto are in the mix, compulsion and impulse are very strong, but Mars in that psychological area is clashing with Pluto in the part of your chart to do with how you think and say things. So conversations can be supercharged. Just be conscious of that. But I think the longer term plan with the sun over the next month certainly gives you a chance to clarify your future direction. And if you have been beavering away professionally, it is going to be who, as much as what you know, that's going to be important. And your ability to relate to people in that very upbeat, dynamic and often jovial way could be something that's very much an asset for you. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free. Also get your life roadmap report. But in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDS for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Capricorn, your week beginning the 22nd of September starts with the Sun making the transition into Libra, joining up with Mercury, the business planet, but also the planet of communication, but critically the Moon. So your emotions could be quite close to the surface as you go into this new week. But whatever goals and ambitions you've got, they're going to come sharply into focus over the next month. And that's an exciting opportunity. Recently, I feel there's been a lot of thinking, a lot of conversation, perhaps some exciting ideas being generated. Just know, however, that the solar eclipse at the end of last week was opposed by the cold energies of Saturn, your ruler. So conversations or discussions, perhaps around a contractual matter, may take a little bit of time. But your leadership qualities can certainly shine through now. And also with Mars moving, the planet which is exalted in Capricorn, into a freer part of your situation, your passion for travel, adventure, and being a bit more spontaneous at times, which has been emphasised a lot over the last 7 years by Uranus being in the most playful part of your chart. And Uranus likes excitement, spark and change. Well, Mars moving into that 9th house is terrific if you do want to take on some big challenges, even physical, rugged ones if you want to get fitter. But the ironic thing is that Mars is going to be clashing with the modern ruler of the sign of Scorpio, which is Pluto, which is in your sector of everyday finances. So your values and someone else's values towards the end of this week might not quite align, and that's where the patience of that solar eclipse is going to be important, not just as a backdrop for this week, but really over the next 6 months, because I feel that is going to be a theme for you. In order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free, also get your life roadmap report, but in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDS for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Aquarius, your week beginning the 22nd of September sees the Sun move into your fellow air sign of Libra. Libra about balance, fairness, can be about relationships, immediately forges a brilliant link to your modern ruler of Uranus, but also a very constructive one to Pluto, the transformer, the planet of penetration, which is pushing you in your sign to really be open to big evolution in your deepest world. Now, the energy of Uranus in the 5th house can be playful, it can be a bit mischievous, but it certainly can be where you can showcase your flair. And because Uranus can be about being very unique. So the energy of the Sun in the 9th house is asking you to open up, push outwards, be more explorative. It's possible, if you have been going through a tough time in a romantic relationship, you may want more time for yourself, particularly on the back of the solar eclipse, which was very complex. If there are disagreements over money, they could show up quite strongly at the start of this week. It's just that as you go into this week, the Sun also merges with the Moon, or the Moon is in Libra, but also the Moon then connects to Mercury. So I think Monday can actually be a very stimulating day, but one where you may feel a little restless. But the intriguing thing is that Mars, the planet of desire, action and assertion, climbs right to the top of your chart, also on Monday. And this is going to give you a much greater appreciation of your self-worth, your value, your sense of authority and leadership is strengthened hugely over the next 6.5 weeks. But it does clash with Pluto. So if somebody else isn't quite ready to receive your unique talents in the way you want them, there could be some resistance, quite strong resistance. So in some ways, this is quite the complex week, with Uranus, your modern ruler, forging a great link with the Sun, but clashing with Venus on Monday. If you do need that space from a situation which has not been very happy recently, take it. And some time traveling, or perhaps pursuing some interests, doing some more physical, perhaps even more outdoorsy stuff, or perhaps stimulating your mind, can certainly appeal to you in the early part of this week. But one thing you are going to do is show much more determination that other people will respect what you represent, your values, your skills and your qualities. You can order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free, also get your life roadmap report, but in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDS for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more. So Pisces, your week beginning the 22nd of September sees the energy not just of the eclipse but also the square between Venus in a lovely part of your chart but clashing with Uranus in an emotional area. You could find even in a relationship that you enjoy and you may be committed to someone, there's part of you that does yearn for some kind of excitement, and that could make you a bit sparky, a bit provocative to try and get a reaction. And of course the eclipse, which brought last week to a close, is going to ask some big questions about all sorts of relationships in your world, not just now but over the next 6 months, not least because of the energy of Saturn, but also the stationary north node in your sign. Getting the balance between what you want and what you're prepared to give to others, but what they need from you, is going to be a big theme. So all of this gives you a lot of food for thought. And with the sun making its way into the sector of transformation, where the moon and Mercury are as well, in a functional, practical strand, you could find yourself thinking a lot about shared finances, maybe your investments, pensions, savings and so on, even perhaps digital currencies. But also on Monday, Mars moves into your 9th house, which is really intriguing because Mars here is very much about being more spontaneous, daring, independent, rugged, creating a bit of space. So one part of your chart is asking you to work on how you connect and relate. Another part is making you much more conscious of the deeper psychological or financial influences. And then Mars moving into the 9th house could bring another part of energy to the fore later in the week, where you may just want to create some distance or space, and it does clash with Pluto quite powerfully. If you have a conversation towards the end of this week, you may be surprised, and it could be a very difficult listen. Someone may share some observations of you that you're not expecting, or perhaps it's you who's going to be surprisingly blunt. But this is a week when your connections to others definitely come under the astral microscope in all sorts of ways. It's going to be shook up. What comes out at the other end is really down to you. You can order your year 2026 personal horoscope now, get the rest of this year free, also get your life roadmap report, but in my package of 30% off, you'll also get your free general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast in PDS for the year ahead. Please see the link below for more.